So, quick introduction as to Cielo, who we are and what we do. So, we've been around since 2015. Cielo stands for Community for Innovation, Entrepreneurship, Leadership, and Opportunities. Um, we are a nonprofit organization helping entrepreneurs become, or helping our clients become entrepreneurs, become business owners. We're really focusing on empowering the underserved entrepreneurs with education, mentorship, and capital. So essentially, what we do is we help our clients become business owners. In terms of the program and services that we offer, we do small business development training programs. We have them both in English and Spanish. If any of you were interested in knowing more about that, feel free to contact us at info@seattlecommunity.org. We also have a childcare business incubator. So if you're looking to actually start a business in childcare, feel free to contact us. We do run a few trainings a year on that as well. And you can contact us at childcarebusiness@seattlecommunity.org. We do monthly workshops just like these. So by you actually being at this workshop, you will be on our mailing list. So you'll be aware of any future workshops we have in the future. We also offer one-on-one small business coaching, resource navigation, and support when you're starting your business, along with, for those of you, and I know some of you here have actually received this, but if you go through some of our training programs, you may be eligible for a small micro grant to help you with startup expenses. And just some quick reminders. I just want to let you all know that we will email by the end of the week a copy of this presentation, so a copy of the slides, copy of the recording, along with guest speaker contact information. And we will have some time for questions, but I know we'll be going over a lot of material today. So just remember that you will get a copy of the slide deck. So feel free to take notes, but don't feel like you have to take real copious notes. We will be sending you a copy of the presentation along with the recording. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'm really excited to introduce our guest speaker here today, Zaida. Has been around for quite some time, is really well versed in financial topics. She's presented at many of our educational seminars and business trainings in the past. So really excited to have her here and just talk about just the subject matters that you know very well. So Zaida, I'll go ahead and pass the floor to you.
Hi, yes, welcome everyone. I'm glad you guys can join us. You probably seen me around, or if you haven't, nice to meet you today. So again, my name is Zaida Queen, and I run Essential Financial Coaching and Accounting. So pretty much, I do everything that has to do with finances and accounting, and I'm very passionate about it. So I hope that you guys, can learn a little bit from me. And with this presentation, really the focus was trying to build a strong foundation for your business in the means of a financial kind of like structure. And again, no one is perfect, not even me. I'm always learning too. And whatever I can share and however, I can guide you, that's really what I want to do. I don't want to intimidate you because I know sometimes that really is the case a lot with finances. People do get sometimes intimidated, and I understand, and I want to bridge that gap, and especially when there's a lot of going on outside that we cannot control, then all I can say is see what you can control with yourself, right? With your business, with all your finances. And so I'll give you some guidelines and we'll stop along the way. And then at the end, also, hopefully, we'll get some questions, but then sometimes I might not get to everything that's specifically for you in your business. So I will open up after the tax deadline. So I put after April 15, I'll open up more one-on-ones that I kind of also, I'm able to give usually free of charge just, after I'm a little more available. So, take advantage of those, and we can sit down and act like virtually and just really talk a little bit more about your questions that, after you have time to also review and everything what I gave you. Okay. So let me go ahead and get started. So give me 1 second to go share. So let me see, share. Mhm. Okay. Mhm. Okay, so here, again, this presentation is about strengthening your business in times of uncertainty, right? So we rather see what we can do now, even if maybe things are not too crazy, but who knows, maybe there is already some like individual uncertainty going on. So this might be even a good time for you. So, or either whether it's outside or already, more individual level. So the agenda will include a little bit on, the budget. So the for me, the budget is really the base, right? Like it's you really have to kind of have something built. And again, sometimes maybe some people are already doing it, and sometimes some people need help a little bit in knowing where to start. So I'll go ahead and kind of show you just one that I kind of have been working with that is a simple start, especially if you haven't done it or kind of maybe want to get back into doing it. And so this is out of it started with a Google sheet actually that I found a template and then I downloaded to an Excel. But you could always convert it back to a Google sheet and then and use it yourself. So I'll show you kind of how to do that. Then also I'm gonna review a formal and informal plan on business, on how to operate a business financially. And then we'll go a little bit more into what does tax preparation entail. So definitely won't teach you everything on taxes because that's a lot, right? But it just really what you have to kind of know, and when it comes to selecting your entity, right? Like sole proprietorship, the LLC, LLP, S Corp, C Corp. So a little bit on that. Of course, all these topics alone could even have their own presentation. So we'll just get as much as we can. Then there's, of course, a little bit about business licenses, tax forms, and financial reports. And then the last thing is, debt management. What does it take? What different types of loans there are, maybe to kind of assess the needs versus wants. And then at the end, I'll also show some like podcast programs, books, and also reliable social media platforms that you can kind of like dive into to know a little bit more about finances. And at the end, hopefully, we'll also have time for some questions. So why is a budget important? Because sometimes it is hard. I do have to say to it's not hard, the budget in itself. It's just actually either starting it or upkeeping it, right? That's the hard part. So but just really know that it's important for money management. Also, you usually that's where you are able to eliminate unnecessary expenses by kind of like organizing and keeping a budget. You know where your money is going, and now you can choose how to change that. And then, of course, if you have saving goals or reaching business goals, such as you want to expand something, right? Or maybe you want to do some research on something, well, that's going to take a little more money. But of course, the budget will help you get there. Okay, so a little bit on like some data I found about budgeting. So US Bank said that approximately 82% of small businesses fail due to cash flow problems, which is directly, of course, related to a lack of financial planning. And this is like, to the necessity uh, that we really do need a budget, right? So, and then this other site called Clutch found that about 61% of small businesses do create some type of budget, which is really just about 4 out of 10. So, if we can get more people to, create and keep a budget, that would be great. And then according to SCORE, many early stage entrepreneurs, they do not have a detailed budget or they create one but do not follow it consistently, right? So these are kind of like the data out there that shows that like definitely we can improve overall. Okay, so a budget is not just a good practice, right? It is also a competitive advantage, especially in the early years of a budget or also when, there are uncertainties, right? Whether it's like in the market outside or just, within our own industry or even just our own business, right? Something comes up that, we didn't expect, which is kind of like our focus right now. So up to 40% of a small business says operate without a clear budget, right? Most businesses that fail do not fail because they don't sell, but because they do not manage their money. So, that's also like something to keep in mind. And having a budget automatically puts you ahead of many entrepreneurs, right? So we definitely want to try to get ahead, and that's why we're helping today to see how we can do that. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead now and refer, kind of like stop sharing and start sharing the Excel form. So 1 second to change that screen. Okay, so this is the one that I found that again, I have it in an Excel, but there is a Google sheet, and I believe it was shared as part of the presentation, but of course it will be shared again with everything just so to kind of remind you that it's out there. Okay, so again, this is called monthly budget, and it really that's what it is like. You're setting up your monthly budget. So if you see here, it does highlight that only edit highlighted cells. If you try to edit anything else, then you might be editing a formula and then, it might not work. What you can do is maybe download one copy and then save it as your kind of tester, and then download another copy that you'll kind of like leave just in case as a backup, right? So at least if there's something that goes wrong, you can always like transfer the data, and kind of start again, right? Or if not, just keep downloading till you kind of get the hang of it. So I'm gonna go through an example how to fill this. So the first step is you go to the summary. There's two tabs. One is the summary and one's the transaction. So we're gonna start in the summary. So in the summary, you're gonna locate the cell L, and in this one, actually it's L8, but it just moved a little bit from the other version, and pretty much it's the cell that's called starting balance, right? And so the starting balance will be 1,000 in this example, okay? So that's what you're starting off at the beginning of the month. So then I want to scroll down a little bit. And so now we're gonna personalize some categories. So on the same sheet, if you see, you'll have income and then you have expenses. So the good thing is that you can change these categories. So in the income, we're gonna put sales, services, and other income. Okay, so that's kind of like three things that we're gonna choose. But definitely you can do any category that you feel fits in within your budget. So then and then we have rent for expenses, marketing, software, and salaries. Okay, so some examples. Then we'll go ahead and go to the third step. So now we're gonna go ahead and plan. So in the plan column, we're gonna plan what our budget's gonna be for some of these categories. So we'll go with sales are gonna be 3,750. Our services are gonna be 500 for this month, okay? And then we'll go to the rent. We're gonna pay 1,200, and then we're gonna pay for marketing 500. Okay. So of course, you're always planning and just make sure, yeah, that your expenses are gonna be less than your income, right? You're gonna have more income, than that. So and then we're gonna go to the next step. The fourth step is you actually record in the second tab. You're gonna record some transactions. So just like it says there, transactions. So we'll go and first is going to be the sell. So if it's a sell, it's going to be an income, right? So it'll be 3-1. This was made for last month. And then it was you did a sales to client A. So, oh, actually, I did. I'm following the wrong amounts. So you actually do the amount first. You did 4,000 and it was sales to client A. There you go. And then you want to drop down on the category. So this category is sales. And then we're going to do a couple of expenses. So again, I'm just running through a sample, but if it was like a real one, you would put, everything that happened in the month, right? As it's happening, because that's the best way to get an idea of what's going on. So this is a Facebook ads. And then for this one, we're gonna say this is marketing. Then we're gonna go to the other line, which is happened on the 5th. And then this was 1,200. And guess what happened on the 5th? That is rent, right? Probably a little earlier than that, but this is when this one happened. And so we'll put it there. So again, we put a few transactions and then we're going to go back to the summary page. So now this has been put in the actual. So you don't have to put it here. It's going to be brought up from what you did here in the transactions automatically. And so then now you can kind of tell, oh, what happened, right? So in income, you actually only so far, right, received 4,000 and you did already spend what you had planned to spend. Okay, so if we were gonna end it just like this, you'll see that there is a little bit of, kind of savings, right? And so you'll kind of calculate that this was the savings at the end. So the final savings, the 1,000, and then the difference between this, um, which is the 2,300. Yeah, so 2,300 is the savings. So at least you get a good idea of like if you change all this to your liking, you'll get a good idea of what you're spending on. And I think that the more detailed you can be, the better. But you might sometimes end up with a little bit of like a miscellaneous, but try to keep it minimal, or else it's gonna be really hard to adjust. So okay. Let me share this one. Okay, just give it a little bit to load. So this is what we've worked on. So I want to just let you know that, of course, when using this form, just edit the highlighted cells, to avoid breaking any of the formulas, record transactions consistently, right? Not at the end of the month, compare plan versus actual amounts to improve decision making, and adjust your budget each month based on the results. So now I wanted to open up a little bit the conversation and kind of, just either you could have, your opinions on whether this or just answer this question. It's like, what stage of the budgeting process your business currently is in, or how do you feel about starting a budget? So I'm going to kind of open it for a little bit. So, and you could raise your hand or you could just maybe unmute if you want to share. Okay, I see Naomi. Let me see. So,
I guess I'm planning my budget. Um,
okay.
I am doing a startup and we did receive funding, so we won a
Okay,
competition,
good. Yay.
but
Very
I feel
good.
so hesitant and nervous to start spending. So, I think a budget would help kind of like let me see because it's only 4,500, so it can only go so
Mhm,
far. So I
mhm,
in this, that's what I was hoping to learn in this course, is to
mhm,
really maximize my dollar and see everything that is possible with the grant that we
mhm.
got.
Good, good. Very good. Yes, yes, it's a good way to start. We really just started this month, so and honestly, don't ever be afraid to like, if sometimes it falls off for a little bit, go ahead and start again, and like it's not gonna be perfect, really ever, honestly. There's times that we get a little more busy, or maybe, we go through an illness, or our family gets busy or ill or something. So know that sometimes, yeah, that you might fall off a little, but don't worry, don't, the more you do it, the more easier it'll be to just keep it. Right. So that's what, have some grace, they call it. One of the the influence that I hear, that they say have some grace for yourself, especially when it comes to this and like budgeting and everything. So what I shared here, of course, it's the form, the kind of like it's a Google form, Excel, but know that there's also apps out there. I myself use Every Dollar. I know that there's another one with Rocket Money that I've heard that it's pretty good, and you get to choose what you pay, which I was like, wow, I never had heard that. But one of my tax clients told me that. So that's amazing. And then, but there's also some free ones too. I think like, I know I use an iPhone, so there's one that I think the iPhone kind of runs. So, I mean, you can try those too if you're more into the app world. But, I just say, don't be afraid to try. And then if it's not working for you, at the end, there's always even just pen and paper, right? The simple one, even just to start with, and then or just a simple Excel also, just to kind of, keep track, right? And your tax accountant will also be thankful, and then for kind of like knowing that you track the expenses, okay? So anybody else want to share before I move on? All right. I think we're a little more shy this time, but hopefully we get more participation later. Don't worry, don't worry. We're just starting. Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on and share more on my presentation. Thank you. Okay. Mhm. Okay, so now I kind of wanted to share a little bit on how to operate a business financially. So there's two ways to kind of look at it. We have the formal process here first. So of course you're gonna legally register the business, right? Whatever it is. Even the sole proprietorship could be legally registered, right? You can go ahead and get a DBA. You can get your EIN through the irs.gov site. And you could get it all, oh, in your business license, of course. So of course, this is what kind of the formal process is, right? Legally register your business. You keep organized and up to date accounting. You have a budget and financial controls. You file your taxes correctly, and I also want to implement timely, right? You use written contracts and agreements. You separate your personal and your business finances. You can access financing and credit, right? Because you're keeping with your credit score, and of course, your finances. So kind of both will help with that. And then you also comply with regulations and licenses, right? So the thing is that when you do a more formal process, it does help with more sustainable growth. You usually can you have an easier time accessing opportunities, and you are also able to lower a legal risk. Um, then we also have what we call more of an informal process. So in the informal process, honestly, at the beginning, it's not too bad because normally, someone, right, that's just starting a business is trying to see how it's going to work. So the informal process might be at the beginning, right? You haven't registered yet. You're just trying to, do some research and see what works. So of course, maybe you're not keeping such a clear record of income and expenses. You have no defined budget yet. Maybe you might still have another job, right? So maybe the time it hasn't been there. You're still kind of mixing the personal and business money, and there really aren't any formal contracts. This one, I would say, try to minimize the formal contracts because we all know that sometimes there could be issues, right? Like legally, if there's nothing written. And then you may skip or delay tax obligation. Sometimes it is difficult to obtain loans, because they ask for a little more information for the business. And of course, there's a higher risk of fines or legal problems. So, unfortunately, if this continues for a long time, that's where there could be limited growth, maybe a little bit more disorganization, and you have a greater financial risk. So for me, it's like it's okay to, do it at the beginning because you just kind of want to jump in, and kind of get your business started as soon as possible, right? And so I get that sometimes you're not able to, kind of follow all these like formal process steps, but it is a good idea to, really start doing it, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who can, kind of manage it, either whether you do it yourself or you hire someone or get a help, from, of course, there's a lot of like organizations that could help at a either lower cost, or, or they offer their services for free. That, that's what we do with Cielo, right? They connect business owners. And so if you're able to do more formal steps, you will see that you'll see the difference, and you will have a better, like stronger foundation, which is, what we're trying to create, because you don't want to, like increase all that legal risk and everything. Like that's what trying to decrease, right? So I just say, yeah, you might be able to start with the informal process, but make sure that you quickly, as soon as you are set on kind of like your business and what you want to achieve, start trying to do more of a formal process. And it just takes step by step. Like sometimes it's not gonna all happen really all at once, but just try to be proactive about doing the formal process. Okay, so I don't know if anybody wants to share right now about like where they are in the formal or informal process. Like if anyone has any feedback or okay, I see Naomi said informal right now. Okay, and she did mention she was in the beginning. Um, Anybody want to share? I know even if you might not have made it through all the formal, maybe any steps that they're in?
I can
Okay,
share real
someone's
quick,
in the
Zaida,
room. Yeah,
that I
good.
know with a lot of our clients, and thank you
Mhm,
all for kind of participating and see in the chat, but I feel like a
mhm,
lot of our clients start off informal, right? A lot of our clients, when they
mhm.
come to us, they're still kind of testing out the idea, validating the idea. And so when we've had that conversation, while you're validating, you can go through the steps if you want to, right? But there's kind of a gray area. We keep calling about the gray. Like, if you don't do it all at once right away while you're validating the business and seeing if it's something that you really want to do, um, we could operate informally. So I appreciate you having that slide, kind of like putting some context to it, because we do talk about it. We do have a lot of clients that do start like that before they go formal.
Yes, yeah, and it's not a bad way to start, right? I guess how I could see it is like when like you're in community college and you're kind of like trying to figure out what you want to do, and you don't want to spend that much money yet, and you don't want to commit yet to it, and it's okay, because I feel like I did that myself. And then afterwards, you're like, okay, you know what? This is working out. I have a passion, and it's like kind of getting somewhere, and then you go to university and graduate, right? So so that's kind of how I would see it. But so just don't be afraid to ask for help though along the process. We know like it's not easy to, and again, talking about being intimidating, right? Like that could be, a little bit intimidating when you're not sure what direction you're gonna take. So um yeah. And then hold on. I don't know if my thing froze a little bit. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try to start sharing. Then okay. So then I'm gonna carry on, and then I'm gonna kind of go into the tax preparation a little bit. So Um, I'm going to talk a little about the process, then I'll talk a little about the forms, and then I guess even at the end I could show you, but also you can look them up and I'll tell you when. Okay, so we have the entity selection, which I know Cielo, they do a great job because I've been part of like their cohort talks and everything, and they do such a great job like really guiding all those cohorts. If you've been part of it, you'll know. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. So, they have like a way to kind of like tell you a little more in details about each of these entity selections, right? A lot of people, and it's good, you could start as a sole proprietor. That's really like kind of what everybody is starting, like, when we talk about the informal process, pretty much that's you're a sole proprietor if you start, right? You haven't really done anything yet legally, so you can't really call yourself anything else. That for all the other types of entities, you do need to, actually fill out the appropriate form. So, of course, depending on what entity you want to pursue, there's different legal liabilities. So, like in LLC and corporations, they do protect more of your personal assets, meaning they kind of keep them separately, than like a sole proprietor does. So that's why usually people start trying to do that, especially if they own, stocks or they have a home, or like big assets, because of course they want to kind of separate it. Just in the case of, and I never want to wish anybody, but like, of course, if there is any legal, like, like someone gets sued, right? Like they want to make sure that their personal assets are more protected. And I will also add, it's a good idea to also check your business insurance for that too. Then, of course, there's the cost and maintenance of registration, compliances, and administrative expenses. So they all look a little different. As you can see, I have put kind of like what the going up the ladder is, right? Like from sole proprietor to LLC, LLP, and then S Corp and C Corp. So the higher up you go, the more costs there are. So that's where you do have to know kind of what you're getting into to know what to prepare for. And I highly recommend also like sitting down even with your tax accountant or an accountant to kind of, let what those costs will be. And then, of course, there's the flexibility and growth, the ability to scale and attract investors. Usually, like if they want to see something more official, so that's where an LLC, LLP, S Corp, and C Corp come into mind, because if they see you as a sole proprietor, they kind of might see you a little more informal, right? They might see like, hey, you don't really have like an entity that I has been that established. So sometimes you might need to consider something more of an LLC or LLP, S Corp, C Corp, and it might not be right away. Like sometimes they will be okay, as long as maybe you have EIN, you have the business license and all that, but it also depends on what type of industry you are. Then, as business goals, there's also simplicity versus tax savings and expansion. So again, this is where I do like to recommend and advise for you to sit with a tax accountant more on, because they can really look at more of what income you're talking about or you're bringing in and what your expenses are and how that will affect you depending what entity you start at or you select, if you're switching from one to the other, right? Because I do have some that they'll start as sole proprietor, but maybe like, it's getting really great, right? Like the business, they're having more income and they maybe want to have, more investors. So maybe in like a year, they're like, you know what, I want to try that LLC, right? So they'll go ahead and do that. And then all of a sudden they still see more expansion and they see tax savings as an S Corp instead. And then, in another year or two, they might do an S Corp, right? And then they usually kind of keep it that way unless, they see something like, of course, you heard of the businesses that maybe want to have more shareholders, more investors and all that, and then they might go to like a C corp, but that's a whole other different area. So of course you kind of have to just keep it in mind as you go along, and never be afraid to like reach out to kind of people that know a little bit more about tax, especially, and how it will affect you. So of course, it'll have a direct impact, that's the last line, on how much you pay and how you file. Okay. And so, this before we get into the tax forms, here are kind of like some steps on how to obtain the business license. So again, I'm not going to go through it as in detail as I did the other slides. And Cielo does a really great like that, like kind of like a little presentation on it too when you're part of the like cohort for their business program. So I would recommend, if you even want to participate more, definitely get kind of into that program, because they'll go a little bit more in detail. Okay. Um, and then, of course, I do want to let you know the three most important financial reports that you'll hear from your like your tax accountants or tax preparer, right? Would be the income statement. So, or usually you go by profit and loss, or P&L, right, for short. And so this shows the business income, their expenses, and the profit, right? Or it could be a loss sometimes. So just know that, that gives you like a good summary. So normally you would get this from a bookkeeping system, but you can also do, again, like a whole, like, kind of like you can do it yourself, like where you add up all the year's income, and then you kind of list out the expenses. And then, you can see there what the difference is. So again, this is essential for preparing taxes. So definitely number one. Then the second one, and this is very important more for like if you're filing as a corporation, and this is the balance sheet. So this shows assets, liabilities, and equity, and it helps you understand the financial health of the business. So yeah, it is a good idea to, if you are able to, well, actually, for sure, if you have a LC, LP corporation, like make sure you are doing bookkeeping. That's one thing, because you will need a balance sheet and a P&L. So if you're not, if you're a sole proprietor, you may not worry about a balance sheet as much, but honestly, if you run as a sole proprietor for a long time, I do recommend, setting that up too, even if it might not be required. It could come up later. Maybe if you're applying for a loan, they might still ask for a balance sheet also. And sometimes a cash flow statement, which is number three. So this one tracks money coming in and going out. And it also kind of like really gives people, and, like whoever's reading, like what is your liquidity, right? So if this is important, yeah, when you're applying for a loan, of course, because they want to see, um, if you're not able to make payments, really what is kind of like your liquidity level, right? So if they see that you have high liquidity, then they most likely will like that, especially if maybe some of the areas are a little weaker. Okay. Okay, and of course here, a little bit of the tax forms to keep in mind. So we have a sole proprietor. You do, of course, you form 1040. Your 1040 is the individual tax form. Okay, so kind of they all have like, they go form and like the number, right? So that one really, every individual really that has to file taxes, they file that one. And then what they do nowadays, instead of having like a short and long form, they have schedules. So as a sole proprietor, you're gonna do your Schedule C, and that is really your business profit and loss, right? Kind of like what you make in profits or what you make in a loss. And you would put your income and then all your expenses. And also if you have any inventory, you also would put your inventory there too. So it reports business income and expenses. And then, of course, you have your Schedule SC, which calculates your self-employment tax. So the difference between just, an individual that's doing the Form 1040 and one that has a business is that you actually pay self-employment tax based on the profit of your business. So if like, you're making like a, certain, let's say that you're doing like 4,000, like, and that's all your business like profit, right? Well, if you're just individual by yourself, your standard deduction is about 15,000. So of course you're not going to pay any individual tax if you're only making a profit of 4,000, but you will pay what they call the self-employment tax on that profit, which is 15.3% of that. So if you just take the 4,000 times the 15.3%, what that goes towards is actually your Medicare and your Social Security. So it's something that like you have to pay on your own, and it's good because at least that will be for your future, right? But because you're not under a W-2, because in a W-2, uh, you are paying half of it and your employer is paying half of it. So that's the thing. So you'll have to pay it, but it's based on your profit. Um, if you are an LLC single member, you kind of follow everything as a sole proprietor. And then you also have to file a Form 568 with California. And this is because California is the one that's in charge of kind of managing all the LLCs, or all the states are the ones who manage the LLCs. And so if you're doing more than one member, it is a little different. You have to file a different form, like other than the individual tax form. This one's called Form 1065. And then you'll have to also file, you'll have to put your Schedule K, which it reports each partner's share of income. So then that will be part of your income in your Form 1040. Okay, so it's kind of like a little starting to separate. And again, you have to do your business return, and then you can do your individual. So always remember that too. And the deadlines are different for some different entities. Of course, the individual tax or proprietorships kind of deal with the April 15th. And then 6 months later, if you take an extension, you have up to October 15 to file if you didn't, meet that first one. But remember, after that first extension, there really isn't any additional. Then you are already late, and you just make sure to file as soon as possible. Especially as a corporation, because corporations, they get tacked on a lot of uh like penalties, like really quickly. So the S corporations, they actually have to March 15th to file if you're following the regular calendar year. And then you'll have up to September, 6 months later, if you did file an extension. And so, and just so you know, the extension doesn't mean you don't owe them the amount that you owe. They really do expect you to make the payment. The extension is for the actual return. So if you do owe, know that you will still be tacked on some penalties, but not as much as if you didn't file an extension. But then again, if you miss the extension deadline, you're gonna still incur a lot more penalties, and kind of like what they call a failure to file penalty, which could add to a lot. So that's why I tell people just file as soon as you can if you're already late. Um, and then so the S Corp, they have a Form 1120S. So that's again the corporation tax return. And then the Schedule K1 gets distributed to the shareholders, right? Like when they have any income. And then that gets reported into the individual tax. Then we have a C Corp that has just the Form 1120, and pretty much that one's just separate, and it has all the corporation information there. Then some additional common forms we have a form 941, 940 that has to do more with payroll taxes. We have form 1099 NEC. These are payments to independent contractors. So a lot of like, business owners, entrepreneurs, they'll receive these types of forms because they get issued if you earn more than $600 for the year. And so you have to report it in your Schedule C, as we talked about, if you have a sole proprietorship. But of course, you'll put it in if you have, if it's done to another entity, right, like the S corporation or the LLC or the C corp, you're gonna have to put it in that tax return. So you'll just have to. It depends who it was issued to. So make sure that if you do have an S corp and you're doing your individual, they don't issue it to you, right? And so usually that's why they have you fill out the W-9, because that one will tell them who they need to issue that Form 1099 NEC to. And sometimes you might get a 1099 miscellaneous, but that one normally has to do with, like other income, not really with any of the independent contractor income. So just so know that, like, if they give you the miscellaneous, it could still be independent contractor, because sometimes some people get it, like they get it a little mistaken, or maybe it's a different type of income, because the miscellaneous does bring like royalties or rent or different types. So you just have to see if that you'll have to make that part of the business or not. And again, just ask your tax preparer, tax account. And then in Form W-2, of course, which is what everybody usually is familiar with, you have the employee wages, right? And that one goes to your Form 1040. So of course, the keynote is that each entity has different obligations, but many businesses must also file additional forms depending on whether they have employees, sales, or contractors. So, also if you have contractors, make sure that you are also fulfilling with the Form 1099 NEC requirements, right? Don't forget that you are also in charge of making sure those get filed, and those are usually due by January 31st of the following year, right? Whenever you're for the tax year, right? So right now, if you had to, think about it and you're like, oh my God, I forgot to issue one, you can still do it, but know that it's pretty late now. So try to always, do it in time, because sometimes if the IRS does kind of catch you that you're doing forms late for people, they might tack on a few penalties, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so I know I'll just pause a little bit here because I feel like I just threw a lot of information out there for you. And so I wanted to see if anybody, had any comments or anything, any questions. If not, definitely I'll keep going with the rest of the presentation. But I know you know, like we have a few minutes maybe to ask, what is anyone have question on, like maybe the types of forms or the form they saw today? Mhm. Yeah, any tax related questions we see? Mhm. I'm like, now is the chance. So don't be shy. You could type it up too if you don't want to say it. So, but if no one has questions yet, then what I'll do is I'll continue the presentation and you can type them along. Okay. So if you think of something, just type it, then we'll address it at the end. Okay. So I'll continue this. So what I want to move on is sharing a little bit about debt management. So again, I think with CLI, I've seen really good presentations, whether it's like from other resources or within the cohorts on how to get a loan and how to kind of know, your personal business credit history. Of course, preparing financial statements are important on getting a loan, right? That's what I say. Having a solid business plan. A lot of like the loans want to make sure that you do have a plan, because of course they want to make sure that you'll be able to pay this loan. And then keeping organized records, right? This is banking and accounting. So of course, that's where the formal process goes in, right? Try to keep all that separated. And then define how much you need and what you will use it for. So of course, having a budget helps for this, right? Because if you're in need of like some money, right? Then you're like, okay, where is it that I'm gonna use it? Is it gonna be for something new? Is it gonna be to pay off already some that and then get a lower, interest rate? Like they wanna know what it is that you'll be using it for. Okay. Let's see then. Okay, so of course there's different types of financing options. Of course there's traditional banks, which we really and I know even with Cielo like kind of like discourage more, and they're sometimes are really harder for small businesses and entrepreneurs because they kind of focus on like bigger companies. So probably those are better not to start with. It's better to start with like maybe some type of business line of credit. There's good small business administration loans, so those are a good way to get started. They work with like approved lenders. They have business credit cards, of course. Those are maybe for smaller amounts. And I know like sometimes people get incentives with points or, maybe like if you're traveling a lot, you might get maybe a bit more help with those expenses. Of course, there's some like online loans and alternative lenders. Just be careful, right? Sometimes because some lenders are more trustworthy or have more credibility than others. So just kind of proceed with caution in that. That's why it's better to go more with like the small business administration loans or something like that. There's of course equipment financing sometimes. There's like factoring like invoice advances, private investors or partners, right? So you can kind of have that even like family or friends, right? But like of course, again, get something in writing, get something more formalized, and be careful because I know sometimes we talk about like mixing, kind of like the private and the business, right? So there's also micro loans, and these are ideal for small or new businesses. So with debt management, we also like to point out, okay, make sure to kind of really assess your needs and your wants, right? So the needs, of course, are the essentials to operate and grow, but then we have the wants that are things that can wait or are not urgent. So of course, like we all need to make the rent, the payroll, the utilities. We need the basic inventory materials, essential equipment to operate, of course, the necessary licenses and insurance and legal compliance, necessary software or tools, and such as the accounting or payment that's necessary. So, of course, we want this as priority. So, this might justify, possibly having to, get a loan. Then, of course, there are the wants, right? Maybe we want a bigger office or in a more, like better location. Maybe our equipment is running fine, but maybe we wanted it to, be a little better, right? Like, or look a little better. But of course, again, that could, be more of a want. Maybe we're trying to hire more staff too early, right? Maybe we can still manage for the time being. Some subscriptions or tools that we don't really use 100%, are not beneficial. So this really can hurt the cash flow, and so like just like in the personal, area, we also have in the business area what could be our needs versus our wants. And these are really important to kind of know and assess as they come along. And I would say this is where a budget would also help you, right? Are you having too many subscriptions, and can you just, kind of like pare down with those, right? Like kind of maybe cancel some and just keep some that are working for you. So a practical rule is maybe before you request a loan, maybe ask yourself, does this generate income or directly improve efficiency? That might be more of a need, but can I operate with out this for now, then maybe if that's the case, maybe that is more of a want. Okay, then I'm gonna jump right over and then, just since I'm almost at the end of the presentation, and then we can kind of continue our discussion and questions at the end. So I do want to share here there's a few links of like reliable platforms and social media these are all in regards to financing, like or like in this one, branding, marketing, startup strategies, investing, like just kind of having that mindset or strategy. And so you can kind of like learn a bit more. I tell people kind of like start, with a few and see who you like. And then, if you don't like someone, like just unfollow them. I mean, they probably won't really even notice in a sense if they have a lot of followers, right? Like it's okay, sometimes it's good to clean up our social media a little bit, right? We don't want to have all this content that maybe it's just kind of creating more noise for us. So definitely just, like follow someone that you really do like or like their strategy. So, maybe choose a few to kind of see if you're liking them. And then there's some on Instagram. Um, so that's kind of like the one that I follow, but I know that there's also you'll find them on TikTok too, I'm pretty sure. Usually everybody kind of uses now those two. So again, on like sales, profit, like, so these are a few probably the newer ones that I found. Um, and of course, there's also the more kind of like professional, right? Right, like that you can follow on LinkedIn, of course. There's like kind of like a more professional platforms. But of course, and of course, I didn't include Cielo, but I feel like everybody, I hope, follows Cielo already. So if not, go and follow, right? But here, I know for me, Score has been a second big one apart from Cielo. They have really good workshops and they do mentoring too there. So, but yeah, just go ahead and kind of explore there because of course you'll find a little bit of everything. But like I told you, sometimes it could be so much. Just choose to kind of like try a few things because sometimes you could even like go like too crazy if you're trying to make everything work. And then of course I do have some financial resources and recommendations. I myself have kind of followed a few financial influencers. This probably are getting already dated, but these are the ones that I kind of like had followed before. There's like Mr. Money Mustache, Suzanne Orman, Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey's daughter. So they kind of like talk about kind of creating peace on with your finances, right? And who doesn't want to have that like peaceful mindset. Then I've also have put like a couple of documentaries who talk more about like, oh, how to be intentional or about money. So kind of like I put those out there if you are interested in looking at that. And then here, I know the pictures are from the Spanish workshop, but they are also in English. And actually they became I think they're mainly in English and then they were translated to Spanish. So either one that you want to check out, we have Your Money or Your Life. So this book is like with Vicki Robin. She really does a really good job in this book. I feel like it really did change my life when I first read it, and it was really interesting and about how to view your money. She talks about how money really is life energy, and that always like reminds me of that you only have finite amount of it, and that was really powerful for me. So kind of use it wisely, right, while you have it. Then you have profit first. So it's about transferring your business to a money making machine. That's what I say, right? Like it's long, but honestly, it's such a good way. And I actually follow this. He has a method on how to kind of make um, your finances a little simpler. Like and it's like this whole thing of like creating different accounts and putting percentages. So as money is coming in, meaning the income, right? You're going to go ahead and distribute already automatically based on your percentages. your money and use those, the different accounts. Like there's one for taxes, there's one for profit, there's one for your owner's pay, and you use everything. So it's nice because it kind of like just puts things already into like different categories, and you don't have to think about it so much, all the time. So and then the third one is the simple path to wealth. So this one talks a little bit more about investing. And so if you want to dabble in investing, like he has different ways that he'll show you whether you want to minimize the risk or you're ready to maybe do a little bit more risk, or maybe, and he puts a little bit of different way, like that you could be in different areas of your life, right? Like maybe you start with less risk, and maybe as your wealth grows a little bit, you could maybe, let diversify. Okay, so just so that you know, here's all my contact information. Of course, they're gonna share that with you. And I am gonna open up a little bit of my Calendly. I did open a few already, but there will be more open for after the tax season. So just because it's a little crazy right now. But I'll go ahead and stop sharing for now. So then I see that maybe we have some questions. I hope. And so we'll can review these. So I have Naomi said, if I set up my business as an LLC, is it possible to convert it to a C Corp or S Corp? And yes, so the conversion doesn't go like, oh, this the same business really. What you do is kind of like you close that LLC, and then you open kind of like the S Corp or C Corp. You could either modify the DBA or kind of like, establish another DBA, but pretty much you do have to kind of make sure like uh, to be aware of the time, the time that you do it, because of course it does go easier if you're able to kind of like close out the LLC for the until the end of 1 year, and then have the S corp or C corp ready to start at the beginning of the year. And then of course, because you have to also keep in mind, maybe you'll have to change your like your bank accounts. They hopefully they're just able to kind of like be established under that new one. But if not, maybe some acts might have you close that account and open a new one. So it's just it does take a little bit of planning, but it is able, you are able to change from one to the other, and then just make sure that everything goes accordingly. So it just takes some planning, but yeah, it is done. Yeah, so good question. Um, anybody else, and also I also want to make sure if people want to just share where they're at or their thoughts, like it doesn't have to necessarily be a question too, or what they think about something in the presentation that they want to share in. So we're ready to hear anything that you want to share at this moment. And again, you could either raise your hand or you could just kind of like unmute yourself if you're ready. Um, but, okay,
That
and
I love
Alex.
the resources that you shared. That's a lot. So I think that's really useful and very it's just hard. There's just so much out there. So again, just remind everybody that we will be sending this out. So if you weren't able to catch all those different platforms or just resources out there, we'll be sharing it. But thank you for gathering all that, Zaida.
Yes, yes. And I do want to remind, because I know it came out in the Spanish one, they were asking about the EIN and how to kind of go through that process. And please, please, please don't really ever pay for it. Like if you can, if you haven't already, like just be careful, because there are sometimes people that they will charge you for things that you pretty much can do yourself. So an EIN is something that you can do yourself in the irs.gov. Like they actually have let me see if I have it open, because let's see if I have, oh, I might have closed the tab. Hold on, let me see if I can get, hold on 1 second. Okay, so here in the irs.gov, you can just go to EIN, and then already it pops up, right? So apply for the employer identification number, and then it already tells you that, you have to complete the application in 1 second. I mean, in one session, not 1 second, and you can't save it for later. And then it expires, of course, if you're not like actively in it, then it'll kind of pick you to start over. And then you can actually already print your EIN confirmation once it's done. So of course, I tell you, who can use it, what do you need? So this is important to gather before, right? And then you can actually apply for it here. And then it tells you the time it's available. Know that sometimes, they're under maintenance, so, you might not be able to get that. And again, the times are on Eastern time. And then there, you can only apply for one AIM per responsible party per day, right? I don't think people are applying for that much, but just in case. And then so again, this is the EINs will help you for payroll, or to operate partnership or corporation. You can also sometimes use it to pay sales and excess tax. You change business structure or ownership, right? Administer certain trusts, retirement plans, and all that. So just make sure that really, like, you know, you're able to kind of collect all that and follow it. This is the EIN is done, after you do your DBA, of course. The DBA does come first. And then you could do, your business license and the EIN. So, you kind of have to kind of follow. So, yeah. So then I'm just seeing if there's any questions in that. So, but for sure, yeah, make sure that, you are following that. And then I don't know if there's any else. So I'm just seeing. Uh, okay. So then and then of course, like I wanted to share here where we were talking. The, there's gonna be so many schedules, so I gotta be more specific. But we're talking about the Schedule C, right? Which is usually how everybody begins. So you can actually, you know, see it right in here. And sorry, my little thing is kind of acting up. So let's see, I'm gonna stop sharing for a bit and kind of pull it up because I like how Adobe always tries to sell me my um they're always on you to try to get you to get their product. So I'll share it again. So once I download it, you'll see this is the profit and loss for business. So if you were kind of wondering what you can write off and stuff, you can kind of look at this already and see that there's different things that they give you, or like that you can write off, right? So, usually like you can do health insurance, but it's gonna be in a different area. But like business insurance, right? Sometimes interest. So like let's say that you have a business expense. That's why it's good to keep businesses and personal separate, because let's say you have a business credit card and you have a revolving balance, that interest could be written off, because of course the expense that you did will be a write-off in itself. But once it's just kind of revolving there, you're not able to write off the whole amount because you don't want to do it twice, right? But you can, of course, if there's interest that you paid for that expense, you can write that off. Legal and professional services. So anything that you're paying for, like any, whether it's legal or tax, or like accounting, like even our tax fees, like they all get written off, like for that year. So if you're paying for tax preparation right now for 2025, right, you're paying it in 2026. So next year you have another write-off, right? So it kind of follows that. Of course, any rent or lease. Know that meals, there's travel meals in the business deals, so all really get usually deducted at 50%, unless you're kind of in an industry that is in transportation, such as like a truck driver. So a truck driver could get a little bit more in meals just because they're driving more often. But then, but if you're not really doing that type, then of course you're only gonna get like about 50%. And again, to deduct meals, know that it has to do with the business. So if you're going out with like like a client, right? And you're having a meal, that's deductible. But if you're going out by yourself for lunch, that's not deductible. So it's like it has to do that it must be business related talk. If you are traveling more than 50 miles away from, your business or usually your home, then you get like that deduction, and you could deduct as long as it's like a business related travel, you can deduct those meals, and I guess it'll be like 50% of that cost. Okay, so and again, don't forget your subscriptions. Like sometimes they have Spotify, Zoom, Costco, Sam's Club, like Amazon Prime. Don't forget your glasses, because without your glasses, you can't do your business. So don't forget your actual glasses, your contacts, your sunglasses usually are also deductible, right? So there are, so just, like I tell people, like we just get used to kind of doing the different things, and so we ask it, and the first year is the hardest one sometimes for people to get all the deductions. But as we move along, we also like say, okay, what type of industry are you? Someone who's a model actually can deduct their gym expenses. So, but if of course you're not in that industry, you won't be able to. So it just all depends also what industry you are. Okay. So just to give you some ideas and stuff. Hmm. That I don't know if there are any questions, or I don't know if Alex has some more uh, last remarks or anything, but I feel I've shared as much as I could for today.
Well, it's a loaded topic, Zeta. It's a lot to it. So, and thank you so much for just your expertise and going over the tax forms, because I know that that's something that comes up a lot when we're working with clients, especially with one-on-ones. There's always that uncertainty about the taxes, right? Whether it's just because they're a new business owner or just it'd be a little bit intimidating, right? All these big old tax forms. So thank you for covering that and all the other tips as well too. Um, well, with that said, if there was no other questions, we will share Zaida's contact information. And again, we will share the presentation deck as well too. I do want to end with one last poll before we close it off for tonight. So we do want to ask one last question and just kind of get your feedback and how you're feeling after attending this session. So let me go ahead and launch that one. So if you can please share 3 words to describe how you're feeling now as you end the workshop. So now after hearing everything that Zaida had to say in her presentation, now how are you feeling? So we'll give it a good 90 seconds for you all to respond to that.